they have to put her in armor because they think it's edgy. I'm sorry to tell you, Jeff Bezos' company, it's less edgy than you think it is. Or maybe it's edgy in a way that you don't it's like, it's so funny because we have Tolkien over and over and over again insisting that Galadriel is modeled on the Virgin Mary. Everybody knows that the Virgin Mary is a complete wimp, right? Why would you
not if they've been spending any time with you?
Well, okay, that's kind of
all of 5 minutes.
That's our own spoiler alert, right? You know what Our Lady does. Terrible as the ordered ranks of an army, quote the Song of Songs, in front of Constantinople, several times, that she is in fact considered the defender of the city, and the Constantinopolitans will march around the walls of the city carrying her icon, expecting her to drive back the Avars and the Arabs. And 1571, pray the rosary, get the drive off the Ottoman Turks. It could be that Tolkien, in his imagining Galadriel as a Virgin Mary character, already had a warrior image in mind.
He had plenty of inspiration if it was the case. The Theotokos is not seen as helpless in Christendom.
Look, Casey's already figured it out. Casey asks, is Galadriel meant to look like Joan of Arc? Could it be? I find that their armor looks very, very similar. The armor that the costumers in Rings of Power have put Galadriel in, for whatever scene that's in the trailer, is strikingly similar to the one medieval portrait that we have of Joan of Arc in her armor. What do you make of it now that I've led you down this little path here? Put these two side to side. Put Joan of Arc and Galadriel side to side in their armor, and how edgy and woke are you feeling now? I know what Amazon is trying to do. I think it's it's trying to appeal to who knows what. Is it a non-Christian audience? Is it a Christian audience? Maybe the first things that is in fact on the right track, and that Amazon is secretly making a Christian series.
Amazon secretly plots to retake Constantinople.
Amazon secretly plots.
That would be pretty base.
There is the reality that many people read Tolkien. I mean, Catholics read him and say, oh, it's all Catholic. Catholics that wrote to him kept saying, oh, I see the Virgin Mary in your Lady Galadriel. And he's like, oh, yes, of course she is. But she's, of course, a penitent. I was asked by the College Fix to reflect on some titles from the recent Oxenmoot conference. It was held a week or so ago in Oxford about Tolkien, and one of them, Professor Robin Reed, was saying the alt-right religious appropriation of Tolkien, which is pretty hilarious. It's like the alt-right religious appropriation. What could she possibly mean? We don't have enough women in armor in the religious right? Wait, which side's Joan of Arc on? Is she Christian?
Christian and very monarchist.
And very, clearly. Very monarchist, indeed.
Her entire mission was to restore France under the direct rule of a French Catholic king. I mean, it doesn't get more right wing than that, does it?
Well, I've really lost track of which wing is. There are two wings of the same bird, whichever bird that is. Yeah. Okay, so Joan of Arc has the prestige of being burned as a witch by the English, or technically by the Burgundians, who were in league with the English at this point, because the Burgundians are rebellious against the King of France, who Joan has helped get anointed but not crowned, because the English still have possession of the crown, or the Burgundians do, I'm not sure. But you're right, Joan's whole point is to help restore Charles VII to his rightful place as the King of France, and it's for that reason that she dons armor, in order to help him lift the siege of Orleans.
But she's not donning armor as a direct combatant. She was instructed to cross-dress for a different reason than to actually go out and kill Englishmen.
They press her on things like where did the sword come from and so forth. In a rehabilitation trial, when she's dead, her men testified to the fact that she was with them in the field, in the military field, and commanded them, but she did bear the sword into battle, but she didn't kill anybody as far as anybody remembered. Yeah. So it's more symbolic.
So holy theatrics of seeing a young peasant girl leading an army dressed as a soldier as a kind of way of inspiring the men, but not necessarily as an inversion of her virtue.
A great deal was made in her trial by the Burgundians that she had been given women's clothes to wear in prison, and then changed back into her men's clothes, and they press on it, and it's one of these, perennial mysteries in the scholarship discussion. Exactly what was the problem with her wearing men's clothes? What was so, and not just the armor, but just men's clothes as such, not a dress. She's being tried basically as a threat to the state, to the Burgundians and to the English. I'm never sure why they're bringing it up, because they're trying desperately to figure out some way to get her on something. The clothing just seems to be the thing that she's most stubborn about. What is clear, though, from her rehabilitation, when Charles is now king and he's embarrassed not to have supported her better, that her men followed her willingly. And a number of them testify that she was a good commander, and that she kept good discipline in the field, and that they are there. I mean, the time when she's fighting does ennoble her. In the image of her in armor, she's shown with a banner, and one of the things that came up at the first trial is she was captured because she was wearing a golden cape. Don't wear capes if you're a superhero. That she was pulled back.
It always ends badly with capes.
It always ends badly with capes. She was a peasant, born as a peasant, but she had that right to wear that cloth of gold because she had been ennobled by Charles. He then withdrew support from her and didn't send her reinforcements. These various fantasy versions of history that we're now digging down to the root of why I think Amazon's on the wrong track. If what it wants to do is like challenge the dominant narrative anyway. One, we have the Virgin Mary, understood throughout the Middle Ages as a great battle commander in the sense of, there's a line in the Song of Songs that's used to describe her as terrible as the ordered ranks of the army. And she is recognized as leading armies, particularly in defense of cities like Constantinople and Chartres. That's not the problem that we are told it's supposed to be. Neither in Joan's rehabilitation is it at all clear that it was the problem that the English and the Burgundians wanted to make it, that she was leading these soldiers. They don't seem to have been as bothered by it. I mean, there's plenty of women in the Middle Ages that are recognized as lords, widows, and hold. There are no queens except for one in the English tradition, the Empress Matilda, who actually, commands armies against her cousin Stephen when they're in competition for the succession in the 12th century. So there's a lot of fantasy version of like what was permitted women in the past, like whether they go into battle, whether they be commanders, whether they be recognized as leaders.
They think what's going on now is the wokeists are trying to smash the patriarchy with Tolkien.
Ooh.
From what you're saying, old Europe, medieval Europe had much more fluidity in terms of what women were able to do than what we're told is generally their traditional place. I'm still stuck on exactly what it is about Galadriel and armor that is irritating us.
Well, I would say nothing except for the pretense that it's supposed to be, so edgy. It's the cloying sanctimony of yes, we are going to improve on the way in which you've been portraying these stories by doing this, that, or the other adjustment, including doing something like making sure that Galadriel is the lead warrior in the story, and that we are now supposed to, as women, feel more empowered by seeing Galadriel in armor than when we saw her in a beautiful dress. I mean, I'd like her to wear a beautiful dress, frankly.
They're trying to satisfy this desire in women now to be seen as commanders. Mm-hmm. The crusade against masculine heroism.
Oh, much.
I don't know.
Much. We do. Much.
I'll go there.
We want to hate on this crusade of masculine heroinism. Masculine. What do we want to hate on?
Did you just bend the gender then?
I'll bend these genders. You know who else gender bended?
Joan of Arc. Amazon.
What are we going to do with that? And Mel says, Christendom cures boredom. Exactly. We're trying to get there.
That's my take. I think this is why it's irritating. Because the armor that Joan of Arc wore, she had earned through her valor, through her virtue, through her submission and obedience to God, and through her selfless sacrifice and duty to her nation and God and country and all of that kind of stuff, where the women now that want to wear armor are not willing to sacrifice. They are not willing to take on the duty that would require them to earn that armor and that golden cape. They want to be superheroes without the sacrifice. So I think this is what's really annoying me about it.
What's interesting is that therefore they don't even want to be men in that version of things. They're modern pictures of Joan of Arc in armor. She was very, very popular, of course, throughout the 19th century in France, and statues and plays and things like that. Woman in armor is a very familiar image, thanks to Joan. Because again, we wouldn't know it if it wasn't in the Gospels. So the evangelists put it in. They make the women the witness. All of Christianity depends on the belief, the men's, just like with Joan and her leading the men. Christianity is founded on believing the women. You never get married. You're never going to have children. Is there a pattern for this in our stories? I find this amazingly ironic. It's hilarious if you start realizing it. Did Joan of Arc have children?
No, but she wasn't.
She was a saint.
Well, yes.
Let's tell Joan's story. The patriarchy is real. That bad king, that bad English king, he's not letting the true king become king. Okay, so kings are still in there. She's already the key to a better world. Well, Joan starts out, she's just a peasant, right? How does she end up in armor?
Because she starts to talk with her saints.
Oh my.
She begins having visions.
Did everybody believe her when she had these visions and conversation?
No. I thought she was quite mad.
Thought she was totally mad. Do you remember who she said she was talking to?
Saint Catherine of Sinai?
Yes. Or Saint Catherine of Alexandria, whose monastery is now at Sinai. Yeah, Saint Michael the Archangel, right? And Saint Margaret.
Ah, yes. The one who tames the snake.
Well, it's Satan in the form of a dragon who swallows her, and then she's typically shown like cutting her way out of the belly of the dragon.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have
so metal.
So Margaret is known for having cut her way out of the belly of a dragon, and Catherine. You remember what Catherine is shown as? What does Catherine do?
I love Saint Catherine. She's arguing with everybody.
She's arguing with everybody all the time. Yes. She has this wheel that she's often shown with that breaks, right? We have fireworks. There's supposed to be Catherine's wheel, right? The wheel she was going to be tortured on, but of course she just waves her hand and it breaks. And why are you saying you like Catherine?
She's very clever. She was a defender of the faith and argued her way into sainthood.
Yes. Because she can defeat all of the pagan philosophers that the Emperor Maxentius brings to try to best her, to talk her out of Christianity, and she can argue with absolutely all of them and make them look foolish. Yeah. Ladies are sounding kind of feminist, don't you think?
Dangerously.
Uh-oh.
I thought Christian women were supposed to be very demure and in floral dresses running through wheat fields, Professor Brown.
Well, maybe some of them are. That Saint Clare of Assisi might do that, yes. But we have other saints. I mean, some who appear and apparently talk to Joan of Arc and tell her to go to the rescue of the king, and immediately everyone believes her. Wait a minute. Her biggest challenge isn't defeating the antagonist, the English. I mean, those were easy to defeat. And in fact, I mean, Joan does go in having, convince the king, the Dauphin, who's like, the prince who's not really great at being king, to believe her. Oh no, they had to subject her to a test that she's tested at Poitiers, apparently for her virginity, which includes presumably fingers, and given a sort of quiz by the theologians at Poitiers, which she refers to in the trial with the Burgundians, that when they ask her difficult theological questions, she says, I already answered that. So Joan, just like Catherine, is able to best these theologians with her doctrinal answers, but has to, let's see, number 3 in the feminist challenge.
She was illiterate as well. Yes?
Probably. She seems to have known the prayers that a layperson would learn in Latin.
Yes.
And couldn't sign her name, so she's not able to write. But the feminist heroine's challenge is, her biggest challenge isn't defeating the antagonist, it's defeating disbelief in her. Men in particular won't believe she's as amazing as she really is. Well, Charles the Dauphin clearly didn't believe Joan to start with. He kept having her quizzed. I think maybe they found the wrong script.
Spent a lot of money on the wrong script.
They sure spent a lot of money to turn Galadriel into Joan of Arc. They could have just read a few saints' lives, right? She's better than any male mentor figure. I mean, Joan doesn't seem to, she does seem to have had men who supported her, as I mentioned, but uh, the, I mean, and she does end badly, but I mean, you could say she ends up in heaven, so she wins in the end, and definitely
After being
after
burned.
being burned, but you know that, but
Yeah.
never be a wife or mother. This is wait, I think the feminist heroine's journey is a virgin saint.
Shocking.
I'm shocked.
Shocking. They really, really deeply want to be holy women. Joan was put through multiple trials on her way to becoming a saint.
Right.
This is the thing. It's not a case of complaining your way to sainthood. Joan was persecuted by her own side, as well as fighting an enemy side, and then eventually being burned for heresy.
Right.
So she didn't have a lot of friends. You know, there were no women around her saying, "Yes, Queen, slay!" Like nothing.
Well, she did have Christine de Pizan. Christine de Pizan wrote a lovely poem about Joan before Joan died. So it was like when Joan's still alive in 1429.
One. She had one.
Well, I mean, Christine is the greatest female writer of the period. So, you know, that's not nothing.
Okay. That's not nothing.
It's not nothing.
Okay. But there was no solidarity. There was no social clique which she was protected by.
That's true.
She had her saints. As a monastic, to reject marriage, that heroic act of rejecting marriage and retaining virginity. So there's a rejection of men just flat out, except for Christ. No, my problem with it now is, in general, everyone is angry about the color changes of the characters and not so much understanding the meaning behind the story itself, because all people can play a saint. There's no rage if somebody puts on armor and says, "Okay, I'm going to play Joan of Arc today." People don't seem to mind so much because there seems to be this acknowledgement that it's a worthwhile thing and it's a good thing to want to emulate the saints. Therefore, no one really minds if you're pretending to be Joan of Arc for a day. There's not the same outrage. There seems to be this very, very loud protest from everyone for the same thing happening to a non-sacred story.